Hello dear students. Now let us see the next chapter number 14, partnership, flow through of income and losses. This is chapter number 14 in the entity taxation series. In the last lecture we had discussed about a basic of the partnership, formation of the partnership and partners interest in the partnership and all the calculation we have seen. Now we are going to look at a flow through of income and losses. Okay, now as we talk about a flow through of income and losses, what does that mean? Remember, we had said that partnership do not pay the taxes on income. The tax is being paid by the partners. Partner has to pay the tax on the income earned by the partnership. Whether distributed or not doesn't make any difference. Whatever income has been earned by a partnership, the tax on it will be paid by the partner. That is called as a flow through. It means the income of the partnership will pass on to the partner. Income of partnership will be passed on to the partners and partner will show that income in his return and he will pay a tax on it. So that is called flow through of income. Okay. First of all, allocation of income. Partnerships income and expenses are allocated to the partners at the year end, which partners have to include in their return. So partnership will allocate all the income and expenses to the partner according to the appropriate basis, and partner will include that thing in his return. General income or loss from a partnership are distributed to the partners in their profit sharing ratio as per the agreement. Special items may be distributed based on the special benefit to the partner. However, if no special base of allocation exists, then the same ratio of profit to be used for special items. Okay. So two bifurcation they are making, general item and special item. General item will be distributed in the normal profit sharing ratio to all the partner, what is decided in the agreement, and a special item will be allocated on a special basis. Now, what are the special item and how it will be there, we'll discuss in the later section of the chapter. There are certain special profits and losses, there are certain special expenses which will be allocated to a particular partner only, or it will be distributed in some special ratio. So that we'll discuss in the later section of the chapter. You need to just simply consider if it is a general income, general expenses, then in the profit sharing ratio to be distributed, and a special item to have a special basis for the allocation. If no special basis exists, then profit sharing ratio is always there to distribute any kind of income and expenses. Now let us see the next concept, that is a distributive share of a partner. What is a distributive share of the partner? It means nothing but how much of the income of partnership will be distributed to a partner. It is called as a distributive share of the partner. Partnership is not taxable on its income, but partner has to pay a tax on it, that we have discussed already. Partnership reports a taxable income in form 1065. Whatever taxable income the partnership is having, it will report into form 1065. Profit or loss are reported to each partner in a respective profit or loss sharing ratio, as we discussed. All the incomes, gains, losses, deductions and credits which are separately stated or specially allocated are removed from the total to find out ordinary gain or loss, which is then reported to the partners in a schedule K1. Friends, now you just be clear what they want to say here. Okay. Total income and expenses of the partnership will be allocated to partners in two types: specially stated items, or we can say separately stated items, and second, ordinary or general items. Partnerships income and expenses will be divided in two types: specially stated item or a separately stated item, and second is ordinary items or general items. See, a regular business activity, regular operating activity of a partnership is considered as a ordinary or a general item. And the special kind of items like investments, capital gain, capital losses, charitable contribution, which are not a routine incomes and expenses, are considered as a specially stated item or separately stated item. So what partnership will do? Partnership will report to the partners separate of both. Means they will report separately stated item as well as ordinary items in their forms. Form K1. The form K1 is having a two bifurcation: ordinary items and separately stated item. Both will be allocated to each of the partners. So they will be first of all making a bifurcation. Out of total income, the separately stated items will be removed and then we'll get ordinary items. So that will be reported separately to each of the partner. Okay. Now, what are included in the separately stated item and what is ordinary, that we are going to see here. Ordinary income and separately stated items are reported on a schedule K1, as we said. Examples of separately stated items. Look at this. This is an example of separately stated items. If you just think logically, the items which are not routine, the items which are not operating relating to business, it is called as a separately stated item, or we can say special items. See the example, capital gain or losses, it is a non-routine. Section 1231 gain or loss, it's not a routine. Charitable contribution, it's a special expense. Foreign income taxes, it is also a special expense. Section 179 expense of, it is allowed at a stretch, so that's why it is an extraordinary expense. Interest, dividend, royalty income, it's a passive income. Interest expense on investment indebtedness. Net income or loss from the rental real estate activity, that is again a passive income. Net income or loss from the other rental activity, passive income or loss, and tax exempt income. All these are considered as a separately stated items, or we can say special items, that is to be reported separately. Then examples of ordinary income and deductions include ordinary income and deduction. What is included under ordinary incomes and deductions? Okay, ordinary items, that is a sales less COGS, that's a very routine expense, routine income. Business expenses such as wages, rent, bad debt, repairs, these all are the routine expenses. Deductions and guaranteed payment to the partners. Depreciation, amortization of organization expenses and startup expenses, and section 1245 and 1250 recapture, which is treated as a ordinary income. So these all being ordinary items. So you need to have a bifurcation, friends, separately stated items and ordinary items. If you just simply think with the logic, you will get an answer. Any of the item which is routine, which is ordinary, which is relating to routine business, it is considered as ordinary. And any of the item which is not a routine, which is a special item, it is considered as a separately stated item. So this being a bifurcation of this, and accordingly it will be reported to the partners. Now friends, the next is nature of gain or loss on the disposition of property. Whenever a property is being sold, then the gain or loss, what will be the nature of gain or loss? There are different nature of the gain. It can be capital gain or loss, it can be ordinary gain or loss. So how the nature of the gain or loss will be decided? Normally the nature of the gain or loss is decided based on the property in the hands of partnership. Property in the hands of partnership. So whatever may be the nature of the property for a partnership, accordingly the nature of gain or loss will be for the partner. So it's purely on the basis of partnerships type of gain or loss. However, for a contributed property, the nature is decided based on the property in the hands of partner. See, they are talking about contributed property. It means a partner contributed a property to a partnership and partnership sold that asset. So the gain or loss on that property will be decided based on property in the hands of partner, because partner has contributed to a partnership as a capital and then partnership has sold that asset. So how it will be? Let's see. Disposition of contributed unrealized receivable. If it is an unrealized receivable which the partner has contributed to a partnership and partnership realized it, then it will be considered as a ordinary gain. Disposition of contributed inventory within a 5 years. If partner has contributed an inventory to the partnership and partnership sold that inventory within a period of 5 years, then it will be considered as a ordinary gain. And disposition of contributed capital asset within 5 years, it will be capital loss equal to unrealized capital loss to the partner at the time of contribution of the property. They are talking about built-in loss. If there is a built-in loss at the time of contribution, then that built-in loss will be allocated to a partner and remaining will be allocated to all. Okay. So specifically you need to remember two concepts here. Account receivable. If it is a gain on the realization of account receivable by the partnership, it is ordinary gain. And if partner has contributed an inventory to the partnership and that inventory is being sold by a partner within partnership within 5 years, then the gain will be considered as ordinary gain. So these 2 points to be taken care very carefully. Next, case basis is allowed for a partnership in general as well as for a farming business, and where a gross receipt are less than 25 million during past 3 years. That's we have already seen. This provision has been already discussed. However, partnership having a C corporation as a regular partner or a partnership as a tax shelter cannot use a case basis. So there is a restriction on it. If any of the C corporation is a partner in a partnership or it is working as a tax shelter, then it will not be allowed to use a case basis. They have to compulsorily follow accrual. Amortization and write-off of organization cost, startup cost and syndication cost is same as an individual for a partnership. We have seen all these rules previously also, how to amortize organization cost, how to amortize the startup cost, and what about the syndication cost. The same rules are being applicable for the partnership. Self-employment tax. Distributive share of a general partner is subject to self-employment tax. Distributive share of a limited partner is not subject to self-employment tax. Guaranteed payment to general and limited partner both are subject to self-employment tax. So just be very clear about the treatment. Distributive share of general partner, he has to pay self-employment tax. Limited partner, no self-employment tax. But a guaranteed payment given to any of them will be subject to self-employment tax. So just be very clear on it. Partners also receive a 20% QBI deduction on a distributive share of a partnership. QBI deduction, qualified business income deduction, that we have already discussed at the time of individual series. So individual taxation, we had seen the QBI deduction. The same point they are talking for. When a partner is receiving a distributive share from the partnership, that is subject to QBI deduction of 20%. Okay, now family partnership, where the family members are entering into a partnership and they are running a business. Two parts are there where capital is not a material income producing factor. Capital is not a material income producing factor. It means it is such a business where capital is not so important, but skill, service is the main source, where capital is not much needed, where services or a skill or a management is a main part. Okay, where the main income is a fees, commission, etc. from a personal service like doctors, lawyers, etc. It is called as a service business where capital is not a major source, because where you need to purchase a goods, the capital is a major source. But in this type of businesses where you provide a services, personal services, capital is not much needed. So capital is not a material source. Family member is a partner only if he provides services or is a part of management. In such partnership, a family member will be considered as a partner only if he is providing services or he is taking part into management. Where capital is a material income producing factor like a trading firm, family member is a partner only if he holds a capital interest in the partnership. That's a very simple. Where there only management participation will not work, you have to provide a capital interest. Where a partnership interest is received as a gift from the other family member, the distributive share of a partnership creates a partnership interest. Sometimes other family member is gifting his share to the other family member. In that case, it is automatically included as a partnership interest, and whatever distributive share of that partner will be transferred to the person who receives a gift. Deduction of losses. What about loss deduction? Partner can deduct the loss only up to his capital. That's a very much pure simple rule. Only up to his capital base he can deduct the loss, and balance loss will be carried forward. The loss is deductible up to at risk value. That is a partner's basis less partner's share of a non-recourse debt. At risk value. Only up to at risk value the loss can be deducted. How to find at risk value? Partner's basis less partner's share of non-recourse debt. Non-recourse debt means for the debt for which partner is not personally liable, that is to be reduced, and remaining will be at risk value, and up to at risk value the loss can be deducted. Passive loss is deductible only up to passive income. Disallowed loss is carried forward to a future years. Excess business loss is deductible up to 2,50,000 or a 5 lakh single or joint filing, and remaining is added back to a annual carry forward. These rules we have already discussed at the time of individual. The same rules are being repeated here. So friends, this being theory for chapter number 14, flow through of income and expenses. Now friends, let us see the MCQs, chapter number 14, flow through of income. Question number 1. Partner had an initial basis of 20,000. He had a 20% interest in the partnership. Partnership reported a loss of 70,000. He had withdrawn 11,000 from the firm. How much of the loss is deductible to a partner? The question being asked, how much of the loss can be deducted by a partner? Loss can be deducted up to capital base, up to basis in the partnership. Okay, his initial basis is 20,000, and out of that he has withdrawn the amount of 11,000. So it will be reduced. So now his basis has been 9,000 only. Okay. And what is his share in the loss? 70,000 of the loss has been reported and 20% of it. So 70,000 into 20% is equal to 14,000. So can he deduct 14,000 of the loss? Answer is no. He can deduct the loss only up to capital base, that is 9,000. Answer is C option. 9,000 will be the amount what loss he can deduct, that is up to capital base. Question 2. Which of the following is a separately stated item to be reported to a partner? Separately stated item. Which is a separately stated item? COGS. COGS, is it a separately stated item? No, it is not. It is ordinary item. Guaranteed payment to partner, is it separately stated item? No, it is ordinary. Charitable contribution, yes, it is separately stated item. The answer is C option. Okay, C option is a correct answer. Which of the following is not a separately stated item to be reported by a partner? Not a separately stated item. It means what is ordinary item that you need to consider? Okay, capital gain, separate item. 179 expense of, separate stated item. Foreign income tax, separately stated item. Wages, it's an ordinary expense. So wages is the correct option, answer. A partnership sold a furniture at a gain of 20,000 which was contributed by a partner 2 years ago, which was inventory in the hands of his personal business. What will be the nature of gain? Remember friends, a partner contributed an inventory to the partnership and partnership sold it within 5 years, then the gain is considered as a ordinary gain. The answer is ordinary gain. B is the correct option. Because it is sold within 5 years, only within 2 years it has been sold, so it's ordinary gain. Which of the following entity may follow cash basis? Which entity may follow cash basis? A partnership having a gross receipt of 20 million, yes. Receipt less than 25 million, they can follow cash basis. So A is the correct answer. Partnership having a C corporation, no, they cannot follow cash basis. Tax shelter cannot follow cash basis. Partnership having a gross receipt of 30 million, they cannot follow. The answer A is a correct answer. Which of the following is not subject to self-employment tax to the partner? Which of the following is not a subject to self-employment tax? Okay, distributive share to general partner, yes, it is subject to self-employment tax. Distributive share to limited partner, no, it is not subject to self-employment tax. So B is the correct answer. C and D, guaranteed payment, it is subject to self-employment tax. In a family partnership where the capital is not a material source, who will be eligible to be a partner? Where the capital is not a material source, who will be eligible to be a partner? A member who provides a service in the business, yes. A member who takes part in the management of the business, yes. So either of the above. C is the correct option. How much of the loss can be deducted by a partner? How much of the loss can be deducted by the partner? Look at this. Partner can deduct the loss up to at risk value. At risk value. So B is the correct option. At risk value. High risk, least risk, due risk. These are the wrong word which being used. So at risk value is the correct option. B is answer. So these being MCQs for chapter number 14. Now friends, let us see the next chapter number 15, transactions with the partners. This is again the chapter relating to partnership only into entity taxation series, chapter number 15, transactions with the partners. Guaranteed payment. Okay, what is a guaranteed payment? Guaranteed payments means a payment which will be received by the partner irrespective of profit. Whether a firm earns a profit or not, the partner will be paid such amount. It is called as a guaranteed payment. Many times it happens that some of the partners are there who wish to join a partnership firm, but they are so much valued persons that they need some guaranteed profit. So the firm guarantees certain amount of profit to that partner. It is called as a guaranteed payment. So see over there. It means a payment to a partner irrespective of income of a partnership. Look at the word, irrespective of income of the partnership. Means whether partnership has a profit or not, it doesn't make any difference. The fixed amount which has been guaranteed to the partner, it is going to be paid to that partner by the partnership firm every year. So that is irrespective of profit. It is treated as an ordinary income to the partner. Partner will be recording it as an ordinary income and it will be deduction for a partnership. So it reduces the distributive share of the partner. So whatever, let's say there is a profit of 1 lakh and 20,000 has been guaranteed to partner A. So out of 1 lakh, 20,000 will be reduced. So remaining 80,000 will be a distributive share of all the partners. 20,000 has been purely given to a partner A as a guaranteed payment. So partner A will record that as an ordinary income and it will be deduction for the partnership. The payment is assumed to be on the last day of the year. Okay, so that is about guaranteed payment. Now we are talking about pre-contribution, that is a built-in gain or loss. Built-in gain or loss, first of all, let me just again remind you what is a built-in gain or loss. Partner X contributed a property to partnership XYZ. There is a partnership XYZ and partner X has contributed a property. Okay, he is contributing property A, whose adjusted basis is 5,000 and FMV is 8,000. So it means there is a gain of 3,000. Now friends, this 3,000 of gain is not going to be recognized at the time of contribution of property. As we have already seen, this gain will not be recognized at the time of contribution of the property. So this gain is called as a built-in gain. This is called a built-in gain. Fine. Okay. As well as, let us say partner has contributed a property B whose adjusted basis is 5,000 and whose FMV is 4,000. It means there is a loss of 1,000. This is called as a built-in loss. It is also not recorded by a partner at the time of contribution. So built-in loss and built-in gain. This is a concept which we have to just discuss here. Okay, what will be the treatment when a partnership sells asset? Okay, let's look at the rules. When a partner contributes a property whose FMV is more than or less than its AB, the difference is considered as a built-in gain or loss. It means gain or loss at a time of contribution of the property is considered as a built-in gain or built-in loss, which is not recognized at the time of contribution of the property, but the treatment will be given when the asset is actually sold by the partnership. On sale of such a property by a partnership, the gain or loss up to built-in gain or loss is specifically allocated to such a partner and balance is allocated to all the partners in their ratio. Look at this. Now friends, if I just give you an example, a partner X and partnership XYZ. Partner X contributed a property whose AB is 10,000 and FMV is 15,000. And let us say partnership sold this asset for 25,000 after some time. Now if you see, total gain to the partnership is 25,000 less 10,000 of the AB, so it is 15,000. 15,000 is a total gain. Now out of this 15,000, built-in gain is how much? Difference between these two. 15 minus 10, that is 5,000. It will be specifically allocated to contributing partner, that is X. 5,000 of gain will be specifically allocated to X. And balance gain, 15 minus 5 is equal to 10,000. 10,000 of gain will be allocated to all the partners in their profit sharing ratio. Fine. So gain on a sale of a property by a partnership will be divided in two parts. Up to built-in gain, it will be allocated to contributing partner and remaining gain will be allocated to all. Okay. Now let's say, just for example, in this example only, XYZ had sold this property for 12,000. Then what? If they had sold it for 12,000, then total gain to a partnership is 12,000 less 10,000 is equal to 2,000. And built-in gain is 5,000. So what to do? Total gain of 2,000 will be considered as a built-in gain and it will be allocated to X. So nothing is going to be allocated to all the partners. Up to built-in gain, you need to remember, up to built-in gain it will be allocated to the contributing partner and remaining gain will be distributed to all the other partners. So here gain is 2,000, which is less than built-in gain. That means total gain will be allocated to contributing partner itself. And same way it can be loss situation also. Like let's say a partner contributed to ABC firm a property whose AB was 5,000 and FMV was 3,000. And now this ABC firm sold the property for 2,000. Okay, what is the total loss? Total loss will be 2,000 minus 5,000 is equal to 3,000, out of which built-in loss, how much was the built-in loss? Difference between these two, that is 2,000, will be specifically allocated to A, and remaining loss of 1,000 will be allocated to all the partners in their profit sharing ratio. Fine. So this is a treatment about loss. So whether you talk about a gain or loss, it's the same treatment to be given for either of the situation. Built-in gain allocated to contributing partner as well as built-in loss also allocated to contributing partner, and remaining is allocated to remaining all the partners in the profit sharing ratio. Okay. Now, nature of gain or loss to be in the hands of partnership, as we have already discussed. However, gain or loss on the sale of contributed property. Remember this rule we have already discussed. A partner has a contributed property to the partnership and partnership has sold the asset. Then the nature of gain or loss. If we talk about inventory, sold within 5 years, then ordinary gain or loss, and sold after 5 years, then capital gain or loss. Realization of account receivable, ordinary gain or loss. Capital asset, sold within 5 years, then capital loss up to built-in loss is going to be allocated to such a partner and balance to all the partners. This rule we have already discussed. So there is nothing new. It is just a repetition for you. Now related party rule. Okay. Loss on sale of a property by a partnership to a partner holding more than 50% interest directly or indirectly. If a partnership is selling a property to such a partner who holds more than 50% of interest, directly or indirectly, then such loss is not deductible. Look at this, such loss is not deductible to partnership. However, when such related party sells the property at a gain, the net gain is taxable. It means the loss will be set off against that gain. Okay. Let's see for an example. A and ABC firm. Okay, ABC firm sold the asset to A, whose AB is 10,000 and sold for 8,000. So there is a loss of 2,000, but this 2,000 of loss cannot be recognized by ABC firm. It cannot be recognized. Okay, now let us say A sold this asset after some time for 15,000. Then how much of the gain will be recognized by A? Now if you see the total gain to A is equal to 15,000 less 8,000. So it is going to be 7,000 total gain, out of which he can set off the loss of this 2,000. This 2,000 of loss will be set off by him. So he has to recognize gain of 5,000 only. Clear? So it means partnership cannot recognize a loss on the sale of a property to a related party, related partner who is holding more than 50% interest. But when that partner sells the asset to outsider and at a gain, then that gain will be set off against the loss and the net gain will be taxable. Perfect. Okay. But now let us say, just for an example, partner A had sold this property for 5,000. Then what? Then it is sold at a loss. Okay, how much is a loss? Total loss is 8,000 minus 5,000 to a partner, that is 3,000. Okay, that is actual loss. Now, can this loss of 2,000 which was disallowed will be used over here? No, it will not be used here. Partner will get a loss of 3,000 only. Just be very clear. So, if he sells the asset at a gain, then the disallowed loss will be set off against this. But if he sells the asset at a loss, it will not be allowed for increasing the loss. It means the partner will be allowed only a loss of 3,000. That's it. Okay, fine. Let's see the further provision. Gain on a sale of a property by a partnership to a partner holding more than 50% interest is considered as a ordinary gain if it was not a capital asset. So when it is sold at a gain, then gain is to be recognized as an ordinary gain only. Except if it is a capital asset, then capital gain. Ordinary asset, then ordinary gain. Payment by a partnership to the partner who follows a case basis, deductible to partnership only when such partner includes such income. Partnership is paying some amount to the partner, so it will be recognized only when partner record the income in his books. Let's say the partner is following a case basis and partnership is following accrual basis. A partnership will not be allowed a deduction on the accrual basis until a partner recognizes that income in his books. So that is a rule to be remembered. Fringe benefit payable to a partner is considered as a guaranteed payment. Whatever fringe benefit is payable, it is considered as a guaranteed payment. So it will be ordinary income for the partner and deduction for the partnership. Okay, friends. So this being a theory for chapter number 15. Now friends, let us see the MCQs of chapter number 15, transactions with the partners. Question number 1, Zen is a 30% partner in a partnership. He received 30,000 as a guaranteed payment from the partnership. Income reported by partnership was 50,000 business income and 40,000 capital gain. How much income will be reported by Zen in his return? Okay, they are asking how much income will Zen report in his return. Okay, once he is receiving a 30,000 as a guaranteed payment, so 30,000 of the guaranteed payment is going to be his income. So 30,000 is for sure, plus his distributive share from the partnership. Okay, partnership's income 50,000 plus 40,000 is equal to 90,000. Out of that, 30,000 of guaranteed payment will be deduction, so is equal to 60,000 it will remain. And in 60,000 his share is 30%. So 30% of 16,000 will come to 18,000. So total of it 30 plus 18,000 is equal to 48,000. 48,000 of income will be recognized by Zen. Guaranteed income plus distributive share from the partnership. Just be very clear here. Guaranteed payment will be income to the partner and deduction for the partnership. That's why partner's income has been reduced by the guaranteed payment and the remaining share has been distributed to the partner. Okay, so 48,000 is the correct answer, C option. Next, Hone, a 20% partner, contributed a property to a partnership having an adjusted basis of 10,000 and FMV of 15,000. Partnership sold the asset after 3 months for 18,000. How much gain will be allocated to Hone? They are asking how much gain will be allocated to Hone. Now look at this, there is a built-in gain. Built-in gain is there. AB 10,000 and FMV 15,000. So difference 5,000 is going to be built-in gain. Okay. What is the total gain on sale of the asset? Asset has been sold for 18,000. So 18,000 minus 10,000 is equal to 8,000. 8,000 is a total gain. Out of that, 5,000 of built-in gain will be specifically allocated to Hone. And balance of 3,000 gain will be allocated in the profit sharing ratio. So out of this 3,000, 20% will also allocated to Hone. So 3,000 into 20% is equal to 600. So 5,000 plus 600, total 5,600 of gain will be allocated to Hone. So option number B is the correct answer. See very clearly, built-in gain will be specifically allocated to Hone, who is a contributing partner, and the remaining gain will be allocated to in all the partner in the profit sharing ratio. That's why 20% of remaining 3,000 is also allocated. So 5,000 plus 600 is equal to 5,600. Next, what if in above partnership sold the asset for 14,000? Okay, if it is sold for 14,000, then total gain will be 14,000 minus 10,000 is equal to 4,000. And built-in gain is 5,000. It means total of gain will be allocated to Hone only, simply. So total 4,000 gain will be allocated to Hone. Answer is A, 4,000. It's a correct answer. Next, question number 4. Guaranteed payment refers to a payment to a partner. Guaranteed payment means payment to a partner which is made irrespective of profit. Whether there is a profit or not, the payment is made. That is called a guaranteed payment. So answer is B option, irrespective of profit. A guaranteed payment to a partner is ordinary income to the partner, yes. Deduction to a partnership, yes. It means both of the above. C is the correct option. As per a partnership deed, 5,000 was payable to a partner, X 20% interest irrespective of the profit. During the year, partnership reported a loss of 10,000. How much of gain or loss will be allocated to X? Okay. 5,000 is payable to a partner irrespective of profit or loss. It means the minimum profit to a partner will be 5,000 and he's not going to bear the loss, that's for sure. So it means 5,000 of gain will be allocated to that partner. The answer is 5,000 gain. C option is the correct answer. The remaining loss will be borne by the remaining partners. Next, salary payable to a partner 5,000 per month irrespective of profit, commission payable to 10% of the profit, and interest on capital payable to a partner at the 10% irrespective of profit. Which of the above payments are considered as a guaranteed payment? Look at this. See, salary is payable irrespective of profit, that's a guaranteed payment. Commission is payable 10% of profit. So if there is a profit, then commission will be paid. So it is not a guaranteed payment. And interest on capital is payable irrespective of profit, so it's a guaranteed profit. It means salary and interest on capital are a guaranteed payment while commission is not a guaranteed payment. So they are asking what is a guaranteed payment, so we can say 1 and 3. 1 and 3. So C is the correct option. Next, Ken 40% partner. Ken is a 40% partner, contributed securities to a firm whose adjusted basis is 20,000 and FMV 14,000. Partnership sold the security after 3 months for 12,000. How much of loss is allocated to Ken? Now there is a built-in loss. Just look at this. Built-in loss. Built-in loss was how much? 20 minus 14 is equal to 6,000. And what is the total loss on sale of asset by the partnership? That is 20 minus 12 is equal to 8,000. So out of 8,000, 6,000 of built-in loss will be specifically allocated to Ken, and remaining 2,000 of loss will be in a profit sharing ratio. So 2,000 into 40% is equal to 800. So 6,000 plus 800 is equal to 6,800 will be the loss allocated. B is the correct option. Partnership sold a property to partner X having a 70% interest for 10,000 whose adjusted basis was 14,000. How much of loss is deductible to the firm? Friends, it's a related party loss. Partner is having a 70% interest, so that is more than 50%. It's a related party transaction, and there is a loss on sale of related party, so it cannot be deducted. It cannot be deducted by the firm, so answer is 0. They cannot deduct the loss. If in above X sold the property after 6 months for 20,000, how much of gain is taxable to him? Okay, partner has sold the property for 20,000. Okay, so what is the total gain to the partner? Let's see. Gain to the partner will be 20,000 less. He had purchased for 10,000. So 20,000 minus 10,000 is equal to 10,000. 10,000 is a total gain, out of which he can set off the loss which was not deducted by firm. And that loss was how much? 4,000. 14 minus 10, 4,000. 4,000 of loss will be set off, so net 6,000 of gain is taxable to the partner. So when a partner sells the asset, he can set off the loss which was not deducted by the firm. So net 6,000 of gain will be taxable. Answer is B. If in above X sold the property for 11,000, how much gain is taxable to him? Okay, he has sold for 11,000. Then total gain will be 11,000 minus 10,000 is equal to 1,000. And there is a brought forward loss of 4,000, means the loss which is not deducted. So it will be a 0 gain. See, loss cannot be recognized by a partner, but gain will be set off. So total 1,000 of gain will be set off against the loss. That's why it will be 0 gain. So no gain is to be taxable. 0 is a correct option. Next, if in above X sold the property for 8,000, how much of loss is deductible to him? Okay, if he's selling for 8,000, there is a loss to him, actual loss to him. 8,000 less 10,000 is equal to 2,000. 2,000 of loss is being incurred by a partner. Now, can the previous loss be used here? Previous loss of 4,000 can be used here? Answer is no. He will get only a loss deduction of 2,000. That's it. So C is a correct option, 2,000. So friends, these being MCQs for chapter number 15. Now friends, let us see the next one, chapter number 16 for a partnership distribution. It is again a chapter for the partnership forms only. Entity taxation, chapter number 16 relating to partnership forms. Now there is a partnership distribution. So partnership distributes a property to a partners in a different forms and different time. See, it may be a non-liquidating distribution, it may be a liquidating distribution. When a partner leaves the firm, he is going out of the firm, so there can be a distribution. So different situation is there where a partnership distributes a property or a cash to the partner. What will be a taxability at that time? So that is being the main concern here. So let's see. Deferral of gain or loss, that is a gain or loss to be postponed. Partnership do not recognize a gain or loss on a distribution of the property to a partner. Look at a very clear one. Partnership do not recognize a gain or loss on distribution of property to a partner. There is no requirement to recognize gain or loss by partnership. Case distribution on a liquidating or non-liquidating distribution above adjusted basis recognize a gain. Partner has to recognize a gain when he is receiving a cash distribution above adjusted basis. Whether it is a liquidating or non-liquidating distribution doesn't make any difference. Partner will recognize a gain. Loss on distribution cannot be recognized except on a liquidation. If it is a liquidating distribution, then only loss can be recognized. Otherwise, loss cannot be recognized. Fine. So gain will be recognized if cash distribution is given above adjusted basis. Loss will be recognized only on liquidating distribution, not on a non-liquidating distribution. Now let's see the rule in a detail. First of all, non-liquidating distribution. It means a distribution of cash or property by a partnership to continuing partner, like drawing. It's like a drawing only, nothing else. However, arm's length sale to a partner is not a distribution. If the partnership is selling goods to the partners, it is not called as a distribution. It is like normal sale to a public. Fine. But if something is distributed without consideration, it is called as a non-liquidating distribution and it will be considered as a drawing by the partner. Non-liquidating distribution reduces the basis of the partner in the following order. See, whenever a partner is receiving a non-liquidating distribution from a partnership, it will reduce the basis of the partner in this order. First, cash distribution and deemed cash distribution. Cash distribution is a cash received from a partnership. Deemed cash distribution is nothing but a decrease in the liability. Unrealized receivable and inventory distribution, that is the second order to be set, and third, distribution of other assets. So these orders should be followed. First, cash distribution and decrease in liability. Second, inventory and account receivable, and third is other assets. Now, property distribution to a partner reduces the basis of the partner's interest and partner receive the adjusted basis of the property at a lower of adjusted basis in the hands of the partnership or adjusted basis of partner's interest in the partnership. Look at this. Whenever a partner receives property as a distribution, partner will recognize that property's adjusted basis equal to AB of the property received or basis of the partnership interest, whichever is lower. How it will go? Let's see. Let's say, for example, partner's initial basis is 10,000. He received a distribution from the partnership. Let us say he received a cash distribution of 4,000 and he received a property from a partnership firm whose adjusted basis is, let us say, 5,000. Okay, then what will be the treatment? First of all, cash will be reduced. So 4,000 cash reduced, now basis remains 6,000, and then he is receiving a property worth AB 5,000. So we will reduce 5,000. Now the basis remains 1,000. So these are your closing basis. Okay, now what will be the AB of property received? AB of property received will be 5,000 straight away, because you need to consider 6 or 5, whichever is lower. So it is 5,000. 5,000 is the basis of the property. That's a one cash. Let me give you another example. Is initial basis 10,000, distribution received from partnership, cash distribution 4,000, and property received whose adjusted basis is 12,000. Now, initial basis, first of all, let us reduce a cash contribution of 4,000. So it will be 6,000. Now property received worth 12,000 and initial basis is now 6,000 only. So now AB of the property will be considered as a 6 or 12, whichever is lower. It means 6,000 only. And here you can reduce 6,000 only. It is going to be 0. Okay. Now if you see, you are receiving a property worth 12,000. So you can say, actually I should recognize a gain of the difference. My basis is 6,000 and I am receiving a property of 12,000. So difference 6,000 should be recognized as a gain. But no, it will not happen because it is a non-liquidating distribution. So in a non-liquidating distribution, you are not recognizing a gain, but you are replacing the basis of the property. Now you just assume that property, whatever you have received, its basis will be 6,000, equal to your basis in the partnership. You will not get basis as a 12,000, you will get a basis as a 6,000 only. That's why the rule is given. Property's adjusted basis for the partner will be lower of what? Lower of basis of partner's interest or property's basis. Fine, you have to consider these two things and whichever is lower. So these examples should be kept in mind. If multiple properties distributed to a partner whose adjusted basis is more than partner's interest in a partnership, then AB of the property is taken as a proportionate in the ratio of respective AB of the properties. Okay, fine. What they want to say, let me tell you. A partner whose initial basis is 10,000. He received a property distribution from a partnership, property X and property Y, whose AB are 5,000 and 15,000. Two property he is receiving, 5,000 and 15,000. Okay. His basis is 10,000 only and he received a two property, 5,000 and 15,000. So total of 20,000 worth of property he has received while his basis is 10,000 only. So what should be considered as a AB of the property? It should be considered as a 10,000 or 20,000, whichever is lower. It means 10,000. 10,000 should be considered as a AB of the property. But problem is there are two property, X and Y. So both have a separate basis. How to calculate? Okay. For X, it will be 10,000 into 5,000 divided by 20,000. I am taking this ratio 5:15. 5:15. So here the answer will be 2,500. And for Y it will be 10,000 into 15,000 divided by 20,000. So it is coming to 7,500. This is going to be another basis of property. So when you are receiving a multiple property distribution, then basis has to be distributed in the proportion to AB of the property what you have received. So here 10,000 of the basis has been allocated between these two properties in their ratio of adjusted basis. So this rule you need to remember. Okay, this was about non-liquidating distribution. Now we are talking about a liquidating distribution. Liquidating distribution, it means a distribution on liquidation of the partnership, means when the partnership is being liquidated, or retirement, debt, or sale of a total interest by a partner. If any partner retires, if any partners get deceased, or he sells his total interest to outsider, at the time how the calculation will be. Partner has to recognize a gain or loss on a liquidating distribution, but a partnership has not to recognize a gain or loss. Look at this. Partner will recognize a gain or loss, partnership will not recognize a gain or loss on this distribution. Cash distribution to a partner in excess of basis generates a gain to be recognized. Look at this. Cash distribution in excess of basis will generate a gain to be recognized. Cash distribution. Property distribution generates an outside basis, that is a partner's interest to be replaced with a inside basis, that is AB of the property, as we discussed right now. Whenever you are receiving a property distribution, it will not recognize a gain, but it will replace the basis of the property. Cash distribution will generate a gain to be recognized, but property distribution will not generate a gain to be recognized, it will just replace the basis of the property. Loss can be recognized by a partner only if distribution consists of cash, inventory and account receivable, and outside basis of the partner's interest exceeds the AB of all of above. That means when you receive a distribution in the form of cash, inventory or account receivable in a liquidating distribution and your basis is more than AB of all of this, it means you are receiving less distribution than your basis in the partnership. That will be considered as a loss. But be very clear, loss can be recognized only if these three distribution is there: cash, inventory and account receivable. So that is a requirement. If you are receiving other properties, then you will not be able to recognize a loss. Retirement distribution means a distribution to a retiring partner or a deceased partner in exchange of a partnership interest. Partner has to recognize a capital gain or loss on such a distribution if capital is not a material income producing factor, like such a partnership where the service, personal service is a main factor, doctors, lawyers, etc. So there, distribution is treated as an ordinary gain up to partner's share of account receivable and goodwill, and partnership gets a deduction for such amount. So where capital is not an income producing factor, then gain up to partner's share of account receivable and goodwill will be considered as ordinary gain and remaining will be capital gain. So just be very clear on this point. Now we are talking about deemed distribution. What is a deemed distribution? Decrease in liability is a deemed cash distribution to a partner. Deemed, see, you remember we had calculated a partner's basis in the initial units. Basis calculation, decrease in the partnerships, that reduces the basis. Decrease in partnerships, that reduces the basis of the partner. So whenever a debt decreases of the partnership, you reduce the basis of the partner. So it is considered as a deemed distribution. Distribution of marketable security is a deemed distribution up to the value of security less partner's share of appreciation in the value of the property. So distribution of marketable securities will also be considered as a deemed distribution. Distribution of a built-in gain property to other partner within 7 years from the distribution of the property require gain to be recognized. built-in gain property. See, whenever I have contributed a property to a partnership and partnership distributed that property to other partner within a 7 years period, then gain will be recognized. Normally gain is not recognized, but when there is a built-in gain property and it is distributed to other partner other than contributing partner, then gain will be recognized over there. Now, disproportionate distribution of hot assets. So first of all, what is a hot assets? Hot asset means ordinary income generating assets and which has not yet been taxed, like an inventory and account receivable. Hot asset means the asset which is ordinarily income generating assets, but it is not taxed. Like account receivable, it is still to be realized, that's why not taxable. Inventory, it is still to be sold, so not to be taxed. These are called hot assets. Hot asset includes inventories if its FMV is more than 120% of AB, account receivable and depreciation recapture. Mainly two things you can say, inventory and account receivable. These two are considered as a hot asset, and depreciation recapture, it is also ordinary income which is not taxed yet. So it is also considered as a hot asset. And what is a disproportionate distribution? So let's see here. Disproportionate distribution means a partner receive more or less than a portion of assets than he should receive as per his profit sharing ratio. Like a partner having a 20% interest receives a 50% of inventory. If you are receiving more than whatever your profit sharing is there, then it is considered as a disproportionate distribution. Every person should receive according to their profit sharing ratio. But if a partner is receiving a distribution of hot asset more than or less than his profit sharing ratio, then it is called as a disproportionate distribution. Partner to receive a gain equal to fair market value of disproportionate receipt of property less adjusted base of property given up. Nature of gain depends upon the nature of the property given up. Partnership also to recognize a gain in the similar way. So both has to recognize gain like this. If you are receiving a disproportionate property, the FMV of the disproportionate property received less property given up, that difference is going to be gain recognized by the person. Remember, this rule is applicable for hot assets only. Let's see with the example how it will be done. Just say, for example, in a partnership, there is an inventory whose AB is 4,000 and FMV is 15,000. There is a land whose AB is 12,000 and FMV 20,000, and it is having a case of 5,000 and its FMV and AB are same. Now, there is a partner A who is a 1/4 share in the partnership. His initial base is 8,000. Now, he is receiving all inventory as a distribution, as a liquidating distribution, final distribution. He is receiving all inventory. Only inventory has been given to him as a final distribution for his share. Now 8,000 is his base and he is receiving all the inventory. Now inventory being a hot asset, it has been disproportionately distributed. He should receive actually 1/4, but he has received a total of the inventory. So how to calculate a gain for the partner A on a disproportionate distribution of asset? Okay, let's see. How much he has received more. You see, actually he should receive an inventory 1/4 only, but he has received total. So it means 3/4 of inventory has been received more. Okay, inventory is FMV is a 15,000. So 15,000 into 3/4. 3/4 of 15,000 is equal to 11,250. So 11,250 has been received more by him. Less given up. Achha, what has been given up? Two things has been given up by him. He is giving up land and cash. Actually, he should receive 1/4 share in the land and 1/4 share in the cash also, but he is giving up. So both 1/4 share has been given up. So 5,000 into 1/4 cash 1250 and land 12,000 into 1/4, that is 3,000. Just be very clear here. For given up you need to consider AB, and for receipt you need to consider FMV. So this way we are making a calculation. 15,000 into 3/4, 11,250 is realized, and given up cash 1/4 and land 1/4, 1250 and 3,000. So finally 7,000 is being a gain to be recognized by a partner. Partner will recognize gain of 7,000. Okay, now partnership. How a partnership will recognize a gain? Now we just see, when a partnership has given only inventory to the partner, it means cash and land has not been given to a partner. It is going to be realization for the partnership. Partnership has distributed only inventory. It means cash and land has not been given to a partner, so that will be a realization for the partnership. So 1/4 of the cash and 1/4 of the land. Now be very clear here, you need to consider FMV. you need to consider FMV for the realization. So that is 1250 and 5000 less given up. What you have given up? You have given a 3/4 of the inventory, because you have given all inventory. Instead you should give 1/4 only, but you have given all inventory. So 3/4 of inventory has been given up. So that is, here it should be considered as a AB. You will see the AB of the inventory is a 4000 only. So 4000 into 3/4, that is 3000. Okay, so 1250 plus 5000 less 3000 is equal to 3250 is going to be gain recognized by partnership firm. So partnership will recognize a gain of 3250 and partner will recognize gain of 7000. This is called disproportionate distribution of hot assets. So whenever a partner receives a hot asset more than or less than his share, then this calculation has to be made. Next, section 754 election, what is that? Partnership may decide to adjust the basis of remaining properties in Partnership may decide to adjust the basis of remaining properties instead of recognizing a gain or loss. Okay, adjusted base of remaining properties are increased by gain recognized by a partner and adjusted base of property distributed in a partnership less adjusted property basis in the hands of partnership. So if partner has recognized a gain on this distribution, what partnership can do? Partnership can just adjust the basis of the remaining asset by this gain. They can just choose this option where they will not recognize a gain, but they will just adjust the base of the other asset for the remaining partners. And if there is a loss, then AB will be decreased by loss recognized by the partner and adjusted base in the hands of partner less adjusted base of property in partnership. So this treatment is to be given, these are option given to the partnership for the purpose of this calculation. So just remember this point. So this being theory for chapter number 16. Now friends, let us see the MCQs of chapter number 16, partnership distribution. Here a partner in the partnership firm is the basis of 20,000. He received a cash 12,000 as a liquidating distribution, as well as he received a property with 15,000 AB and FMV 18,000. What will be basis of property to the here? See, he has received a cash as well as property. So what will be the basis they are asking? First of all, 20,000 is the initial basis. Out of that, you are going to reduce the cash received. So he has received a cash of 12,000. So now the basis will be 8,000. And he has received a property with a AB of 15,000. So AB of the property for partner will be AB 15,000 or interest basis, that is 8,000, whichever is lower. So it is going to be 8,000. The answer is C. 8,000 will be basis in the property for a partner. That is the correct answer. Next, Kian, a partner, has a basis of 10,000 in the partnership. He received a land with a AB 12,000 and FMV 15,000 and building with a AB 16,000 and FMV 15,000 as a liquidating distribution. How much of gain is to be recognized by the Kian? Look at this. He is receiving a property as a distribution. When he is receiving property as a distribution, he is not recognizing a gain on this distribution, but the basis will be replaced. The basis of the property will be replaced with the basis of interest in the partnership. So 0, no gain to be recognized. X had a basis in the partnership 50,000. He received a cash 40,000 and a property with the AB 12,000 and FMV 15,000 as a liquidating distribution. What will be AB of the property received? Again, the same question being asked. Okay, initial basis is 50. Out of that, you reduce a cash received 40,000. So your basis will become now 10,000. And now property you are receiving worth AB 12,000. So 12 or 10, whichever is lower, the answer is 10,000. 10,000 will be considered as a AB of the property received. Next, X had a basis of 10,000 in the partnership. He received a property with the AB 8,000 and FMV 14,000 as a non-liquidating distribution. What gain or loss to be recognized by X? Look at this. Friends, he is receiving the properties in a non-liquidating distribution. Remember, gain is to be recognized only when cash is received as a distribution. When you are receiving other property, gain is not to be recognized. So answer is 0, D option. Next, balance sheet of a partnership shows a cash 10,000, properties 5,000 and capital A and B 8,000 and 7,000. A had a tax basis in the partnership of 7,000. He received 8,500 as a final payment on the termination. What is a gain or loss to be recognized by A? Okay, now when he is receiving the cash payment for the final settlement, tax basis 7,000 and cash received 8,500. So difference 15,000 is going to be gain recognized by him. The answer is A option. A partner received his share of the income from partnership 50,000 for the year and guaranteed payment of 10,000. He also received a cash distribution of 15,000 from a partnership. What income to be reported by a partner? Question here has been asked that what income he has to be reported in his return by the partner. So you see, actually his share of income is a 50,000 and guaranteed payment is a 10,000. This both is going to be income for him, and he has withdrawn cash received. Cash withdrawn is a 15,000. It is not an income actually. It is a withdrawal. So it is not going to be reported as a part of income. So income will be two things: 50,000 and 10,000. That is 60,000. 60,000 is a correct answer. B option. Next, K, a 30% partner, had a basis of 5,000 in the partnership. He received 11,000 as a non-liquidating cash distribution. Partnership reported an ordinary income of 10,000. What is a gain or loss to be recognized by K? Okay, first of all, ordinary income 10,000 is being there. So 30% of 10,000 will be 3,000. Now this 3,000 will be gain recognized by him, as well as this 3,000 will increase the basis of the partner. So a partner's basis will be now 5 plus 3 is equal to 8,000. And he is receiving 11,000 worth of distribution. So 11,000 less 8,000 is going to be 3,000. 3,000 will be another gain to be recognized. So 3,000 as a distributive share and 3,000 as a distribution beyond adjusted basis. So total 6,000 of gain is to be recognized. Answer A is a correct option. Next, P, a 20% partner, has a basis in the partnership of 20,000. He received a case of 25,000 and a property with a AB 10,000 and FMV 12,000 as a non-liquidating distribution from a partnership. What will be AB of the property received? Okay, fine. You see, his initial basis is 20,000 and he is receiving a cash distribution of 25,000, which is more than the initial basis. So what will be here? His basis will become 0 and 5,000 extra cash will be recognized as a capital gain. He will recognize this as a capital gain. But now basis has become 0. Also he has received a property whose AB is 10,000. So what should be AB of this property received? You remember the rule, AB of the property received is equal to AB of the property in the hands of partnership or partner's basis, whichever is lower. Now basis has become 0. So AB of the property will be also 0. The answer is D, 0. Next, Z, a 10% partner, had a basis of 8,000 in the partnership. He received a cash distribution of 5,000 and two properties A and B from the partnership having a AB of 5,000 and 4,000 respectively and FMV of 8,000 and 10,000. What will be AB of the properties for A and B respectively? They are asking what will be AB of the properties received, that is A and B. Okay, fine. Now, first of all, your initial basis is 8,000 and you have received a cash distribution of 5,000. So remaining basis is 3,000 only. Now this 3,000 of basis will be distributed between both the properties in the ratio of their respective AB. Now the respective AB is what? 5,000 and 4,000. The ratio will be applied is a 5:4. 5:4 is ratio being applied. Now we just distribute in the ratio, then 3,000 into 5 divided by 9. 3,000 into 5 divided by 9, that is going to be 1667, and 4 divided by 9, that is going to be 1333. So answer should be 1667 and 1333. A is a correct option. So first we are reducing the cash distribution and remaining basis is distributed between both the properties in the ratio of their respective AB. Next, Y, a 30% partner, has a basis of 10,000 in the partnership. He received a liquidating distribution of a cash 3,000 and inventory with a AB 5,000 and FMV 6,000. How much of gain or loss is to be recognized by Y? Now look at this. His basis is 10,000 while he is receiving a case of 3,000 and inventory with the AB of 5,000. So his total receipt is 3 plus 5. 8,000 of the receipt he is having against the AB basis of 10,000. So he is receiving 2,000 less. AB 10,000 means his basis is 10,000 and against which he has received property is worth 8,000 only. So there is a loss of 2,000. Answer is A, 2,000 loss. What if in above question Y had received a capital asset instead of inventory? Remember the rule, loss can be recognized only when you receive cash, inventory or account receivable. Now here if you receive a capital asset instead of inventory, loss cannot be recognized. So answer will be 0, D option. Next, hot asset includes which of the following? What is included in the hot asset? Cash, no, it is not a hot asset. Capital asset, no, it is not a hot asset. Inventory, yes, it is considered as a hot asset. C is the correct option. So these being the MCQs for chapter number 16. Now friends, let us see the next chapter number 17, that is a partnership. Sale and termination. Sale and termination we are talking about. So when a partnership terminates or when a partner sells his total interest, that is called as a sale and termination. First, sale of partnership interest. It means when a partner is selling his profit sharing, when a partner is selling his interest to an outsider, then what a situation will happen? Sale of interest. It means retirement of a partner or a debt of a partner when the whole share is being sold to someone, when the whole share is being terminated. Amount realized on sale of an interest includes FMV of the partnership interest, that is a cash plus FMV of the property received, and selling partner's debt assumed by buyer. See, two things to be considered: cash plus FMV of the property received plus partner's debt assumed by the buyer. So whenever a partner's share is being sold, the partner's debt assumed by buyer is also to be considered as a amount realized on the sale of interest. Partnership closes its tax year for the portion of such partner and not for the other partner. Look at this. Year will only be closed for such partner and not for all the partners. Only for this partner the share will be closed. Selling partner to recognize a gain or loss on the sale of total partnership interest as ordinary gain up to his share of FMV of the hot asset less AB of the hot asset, and capital gain or loss up to the balance. Look at this. Selling partner will recognize gain or loss on a sale of total partnership interest. How much gain or loss? He will recognize ordinary gain up to his share in hot asset. How? Hot assets, FMV less AB. In his share, he has to multiply and recognize a gain, and remaining is considered as a capital gain. So just be very clear on it. Gain relating to collectibles owned by a partnership is taxed at a 28% LTCG rate, as we have already discussed. And relating to any section 1250 recapture is taxed at a 25% LTCG rates. Sale of interest by a foreign partner where a partnership is engaged in a US trade or business, such as a gain or loss treated as effectively connected with a US trade or business and taxed as an ordinary gain or loss to the partners. So what they are saying here, sale of interest by a foreign partner. The partner is a foreign partner, means a partner is a non-US citizen person, non-US resident partner. He is selling his interest and the partnership is engaged into the US trade or business. So the gain or loss by such partner will be recognized as an ordinary gain. Look at this, ordinary gain or loss that you need to consider. If he is a foreign partner, then also it is to be recognized as an ordinary gain or loss by that partner for the taxability purpose. Okay, section 754 election. If a huge built-in loss occurs, that is a partnership's AB exceeds its FMV by more than 2,50,000, in this election, partner's share of basis in the property is increased by his share of appreciated value in the properties. There is option. Actually, the built-in loss, what they want to say, if there is a built-in loss, then actually the partnership will be increasing the basis of other assets. Partnership will be increasing the basis of other assets for the remaining partners, whatever may be the appreciation in the value by that partner. So built-in loss has to be recognized like the increase in the value of other assets. Just there is an option given as per section 754 election to a partnership. Now termination. What is a termination? If no part of the business is carried by any partner, the partnership terminates. It means we can say dissolution of the partnership, liquidation of the partnership. Partnership tax year is ended and all the assets are deemed to be distributed on the termination. All the assets will be sold and all the liabilities will be settled. So it is going to be wind up of the firm. Now merger. What is a merger? Merger means two or more partnerships merging with one another or resulting into a new partnership. Two or more partnerships merging with one another or resulting into a new partnership. The partnership with a majority holding after merger is said to be continued. The partnership with a majority holding after merging is said to be continued. Like let's say for example, there is a partnership of A and B where their profit sharing is a 60 and 40. There is another partnership C and D where profit sharing is, let us say, 50 and 50. Now they merged and become a ABCD partnership. Now into ABCD partnership, their share has been 40, 30, 20 and 10. These are share. Now these two partnerships have been merged, but the ratio is like this: 40, 30, 20, 10. Now which partnership will be continued and which partnership will be dissolved? Just look at this. Old partner AB, old partner CD and new partnership ABCD. Now whose share is major after merger? AB. AB's share is a 40 and 30, so it is 70, and C and D's share is 30. So A and B are the major partners here. So we can say A and B form is continued and CD form has been terminated. Okay, same way division we are talking for. Division means partnership divided into two or more partnership. Our partnership is divided into two or more partnership. Old firm is deemed to be continued by the partnership whose partners have majority stake after division. Okay, now how it will be? Let us see. There is a partnership between four partners ABCD, the ratio being 40, 30, 20 and 10. Now let us say this partnership has been divided into two parts, AC and BD. This has been the situation, and now the ratio will be 40 and 20 and 30 and 10. Let's say the same ratio they are being continued. So 40 and 20, 30 and 10. Now there is a partnership A, C and B and D. Now this partnership firm has been divided in two parts, A, C and BD. Who will be deemed to continue this partnership and who will be separated? So the partner who has a majority stakeholding after division will be said to have a continued old partnership. That is, see, A and C have a 40 and 20, that is a 60 of the ratio, and B and D have a 40 ratio. So we can say A and C will be deemed to continue old partnership firm ABCD, and B and D will be said to have a separated from the partnership firm. That is a situation to consider. So for the merger as well as for the division, you need to consider which partnership is continued and which is terminated or which is coming into existence. Okay friends, so this being a theory for chapter number 17, and it was a last chapter for partnership. Now friends, so let us see MCQs for chapter number 17, sale and termination. First, A and B were partners in the ratio 30:20, while C and D were partners in the ratio 10:40. They decided to merge a partnership with the ABCD in the ratio of 40, 30, 20, 10. Which firm will be continued after merger? Which firm will be continued after merger? That's a question being asked. Okay. Now you see the ratio of A and B is a 40, 30, that is 70, and C and D is a 30. So A and B has a major stake after merger. That's why we can say A and B firm will be deemed to be continued. The answer is A option. Next, PQRS were partners in the partnership ratio 20, 30, 40, 10. They decided to demerge the firm into P&R and Q&S. Which firm will be assumed to continue the old firm? Okay, P&R's ratio is what? 20 and 40, it is equal to 60, and Q&S is 30 and 10 is equal to 40. So P&R has a 60 ratio, which is more than Q&S. That's why P&R will be deemed to continue the old firm. A is a 1/4 partner in the partnership. He sold his share in the partnership for a cash 1 lakh to X, and X assumed A's share of debt in the partnership. Partnership has a debt basis of 60,000. What was the amount realized by A? Okay, amount realized by A includes a cash of 1 lakh, whatever he is receiving, plus partner's debt assumed by the buyer. Now total debt is 60,000 and the partner has a 1/4 share. So 60,000 into 1/4 is equal to 15,000. So total amount realized will be 1,15,000. Answer B is a correct option. Next, partnership has a following in his balance sheet: cash, inventory, current liabilities, X and Y. Basis as well as FMV both are given. X sold his interest to A for 70,000 cash and A assumed X share of liabilities. How much will be considered as a ordinary gain? How much will be considered as a ordinary gain? That is a question being asked by them. Okay, now let's see. First of all, let us calculate a total gain. See, he's selling the share for 70,000 cash plus his debts, partner's debt assumed by the buyer. Partner's debt, actually the current liability is at 10,000, and out of it his share will be half, that is 5,000. 5,000 will be debt assumed. 75,000 is the amount realized. Out of that his basis, in the partnership is a 30,000. You can see the 30,000 of BESS. So 75 minus 30 is equal to 45,000. Now out of 45,000, this is a total gain actually. Out of this, ordinary gain has to be recognized up to his share in the hot asset. His share in the hot asset. Notice hot asset here. Hot asset is only one, that is inventory. Inventory is a hot asset. Now, FMV less AB, that is considered to be a gain in the hot asset and his share. So let's see. Inventories FMV is a 1 lakh and AB is a 80,000. So actually it is a 80,000 of the hot asset gain into his share. His share will be half, so it is 40,000. So out of 45,000, 40,000 is going to be ordinary gain and remaining 5,000 is going to be capital gain. So 40,000. Answer is what they are asking is ordinary gain. That's a 40,000. B is the correct option. Next, A 1/3 partner sold his interest to B for 20,000 cash and a debt relief on his part of 10,000. A's basis in the partnership was 22,000. What is a gain or loss to A? Okay, what he received 20,000 cash and a debt relief 10,000. So total amount realized is 30,000 and basis is 22,000. So remaining 8,000 is going to be his capital gain. Answer is A, capital gain 8,000. Ordinary gain is recognized only when there is a hot asset. Here it is not a hot asset, only the normal asset has been received. So 8,000 will be considered as a capital gain. So A is the correct option. And this being MCQs for chapter number 17. Now friends, let us see the next chapter, chapter number 18, that is eligibility, election and termination of S corporation. See, now the discussion about S corporation is being started. Till now, whatever chapter we had discussed, that was about partnership forms. Now it is about S corporation. S corporation means a small corporation. Previously, we had a discussion on C corporation. Many of the chapters we have seen for the C corporation, that is a large corporation. Now it is a discussion on S corporation, that is small corporation. What is the meaning and how it will go? Let's see. First of all, introduction of a S corporation. S status can be elected only by a corporation. A corporation have an option to be taxed either as a C corporation or as a S corporation. So it will be an election by corporation itself. Partnership firm cannot have a corporation or election of S status. It can be only by a corporation. Corporate status may be retained only if shareholders are not liable for a corporate debt and shares are freely transferable. See, it means shareholders are not liable for a corporate debt. There is no personal liability. There is no liability of the shareholders for the debt of a corporate, and shares are freely transferable. Then only S status can be retained. Otherwise, it cannot be. Tax characteristics of S corporation. If you are being elected as a S corporation, then what tax treatment will be given? Tax is not levied on the S corporation, but it is levied on its shareholder. So it means it is a flow-through entity like a partnership. So you can say same treatment is given to S corporation like a partnership. As a partnership is not liable for the tax, it is passed on to the partners for the tax purpose. In the same way, S corporation is not subject to taxability. It is passed on to the shareholders for the tax purpose. No AMT, that is alternate minimum tax, no personal holding company tax, no accumulated earning tax is levied to S corporation. This is being exemption given to S corporation. AMC, PHC or AE tax will not be levied to the S corporation. Shareholders adjusted basis of the stock is adjusted each year like a partnership. As we have seen in the partnership for the calculation of basis of partners interest, in the same way it is calculated for shareholders of S corporation. When distribution exceeds the basis of the stock, it is a gain to be recognized. Obviously, when the distribution from a S corporation to a shareholder exceeds its basis in the S corporation, then it will be considered as a capital gain to be recognized. Fringe benefit is taxable to the shareholder who own at least 2% of the stock. Look at this. If the fringe benefit is given to the shareholder, it will be taxable to him if he is owning a 2% or more of the stock in a corporation. Shareholder holding more than 2% may deduct the premium paid on the health insurance if the income from S corporation is more than the premium paid. So he will also get a deduction of the premium paid. Shareholders are taxed for the payroll taxes, but not self-employment tax is levied. So whatever distribution from the S corporation is given to shareholders, on there will be no self-employment tax, but payroll tax is there. So we had seen previously the two types of taxes, the self-employment tax and the payroll tax. So self-employment tax will not be levied on the distribution from S corporation. Just be clear on it. Some corporate rules for a S corporation. Control club rule for a non-recognition of gain apply for the contribution of the property. We have seen the control club rule. The members of control club can defer the gain for the transfer of property to a corporation. The same rule is applicable for S corporation even. They may amortize the organization expenses, as we have seen for the 180 months. This amortization rule is applicable to S corporation. Distribution of appreciated property results in a gain recognition. Whenever a corporation distributes appreciated property to the shareholder, the difference is to be recognized as a gain. No special rule for the distribution of a built-in gain or a loss property. So as we have seen the built-in gain or loss rule for the partnership, this special rule do not apply for the S corporation. So these being certain rules to be considered for taxability of S corporation. Now let us see eligibility rule for S corporation. Who can be elected as a S corporation? Who has a right to be elected as a S corporation? First of all, eligible entity. Any corporation other than foreign corporation, affiliated group, parent company, financial institutes may be eligible to be S corporation. So any corporation is eligible to be S corporation other than foreign corporation. Foreign corporation cannot be S corporation. Affiliated group member cannot be S corporation. Parent company cannot be treated as a S corporation. S corporation may own more than 80% of a C corporation or may own S subsidiary. So there may be a subsidiary which is allowed to S corporation. Shareholders requirement. What is a shareholders requirement? Non-resident C corporation and a partnership cannot be a shareholders. In a corporation, in a S corporation, there cannot be a non-resident C corporation or a partnership as a shareholder. So just be clear on it. Trust, estate and a small business exempt entities can be shareholders. This can be a shareholders. You need to remember a negative list rather, that non-resident C corporation and a partnership cannot be a shareholders of a S corporation. Number of shareholder requirement. There must be less than or equal to 100 shareholder. Less than or equal to 100 shareholder. It means the number of shareholder cannot be more than 100. All family members and the estate is considered as a one shareholder. Each beneficiary in the trust are a separate shareholder and co-owners of a stock are a separate shareholder. This is for the understanding purpose. Family and estate is a one shareholder only. Beneficiary and trust are a separate shareholder for the purpose of number test and co-owners are considered as a separate shareholder for the purpose of number test. Stock requirement. There must be only one class of stock outstanding. Only one class of stock outstanding. Convertible debt instrument is allowed until it is converted into another class of stock. Different voting right stock can also be issued. Look at this. Different voting right stock is allowed, but different kind of stock is not allowed. Like equity and preference are considered as a different kind of stock. The S corporation cannot have equity as well as preference, but S corporation can have a equity of different voting right. That is allowed. Perfect. Convertible debt instrument can also be issued. That is also allowed until it is converted into other kind of stock. So that also to be considered. Now election to be S corporation. Eligible corporation has to make a S corporation election. See, corporation has to elect as a S corporation if they wish to be taxed in the S status. The election to be made by unanimous consent of all the current shareholders. In case of spouse or joint ownership, both have to give the consent. So all the shareholders unanimous consent is required to be elected as a S corporation status. If election is made by 15th of the third month of the current year, the election is applicable for the current year. Otherwise, applies to next year. Look at this, 15th of the third month. Let us say the year being followed is January to December. We are talking about 2019, for example. Let us say S election has been filed on 10th January 2019. Then for which year the S election will be applicable? 2019. Let's say election is filed on 10th May 2019. Then S status will be applicable for 2020, not for 2019. See, the deadline is a 15th of the third month. So we can say 15th March. Up to 15th March, if you file your election, then it will be applicable for the current year. And after 15th March, if you file your election, it will be applicable for the next year. Look at this. So your S election date is very important. By which date you apply to be S status. Okay. Now termination of S status. Now we're talking about termination, when your S status will be lost. First we are talking about voluntary termination. Voluntarily you can terminate your S status when? S status may be terminated voluntarily by consent of majority of the stockholders. Look at the word majority of the stockholders, voting and non-voting, before 15th of the third month of their, before 15th of the third month of the same date which is applicable for the election, the same date is applicable for termination. In case of change in ownership by more than 50%, all the new member have to give a consent if they wish to continuation of S status. Look at this. If more than 50% change in the ownership and if they wish to continue S status, they all have to give the consent, then it can be continued. In general, majority shareholders are giving a consent by 15th of the third month, then S status will be terminated for that year. Now, involuntary termination. S status terminates compulsorily if there is a violation of legal requirement as to be a S status, like eligibility criteria. If any of the eligibility criteria has been violated, then your S status will automatically be terminated. There is no option at all. It will be terminated. The termination is effective from the date of violation. Look at this, very, very important part for you. Termination will be effective from the date of violation. Let us say eligibility criteria has been violated on 1st June 2019. Then from 1st June 2019, it will change to a C status. Before that, it will be considered as a S status. From the date of violation, your status will be lost. In the year of termination, there will be a short year as a S status and remaining will be as a C status. As I given you example, in this example, from 1st June to 31st December, it will be a C status, and from 1st January to 31st May, it will be a S status. So there will be two returns to be filed, one as a S status and one as a C status. IRS may waive such a termination if it seems to be justifiable. It can be waived. Okay, now passive income criteria. The rule is applicable only if S corporation has a previously earning and profit from a C corporation outstanding in its balance sheet. It means previously you were a C corporation and now you have changed into S corporation, and while this change has happened, there was a earning and profit outstanding. Then only this rule will apply. If S corporation has a more than 25% gross receipt in the form of passive income in past 3 years, then S status is terminated from first day of the fourth year. If you have a more than 25% as a passive income, then your S status will be lost from the fourth year. This is to be checked for the 3 years. And from the fourth year, your S status will automatically be removed. If once S status is terminated, it can't revive the S status up to 5 years without the permission of IRS. So once your S status will be lost, you will not gain the same status up to 5 years. Except if IRS gives you the permission earlier, then it can be possible. Otherwise, for the 5 years, you will not be eligible to get a S status. So these rules needs to be remembered for S status, basic introductory part we can say. So this was a discussion on chapter number 18 for S corporation. Now friends, let us see the MCQs of chapter number 18, S corporation, eligibility, election and termination. Question number 1, which of the following is applicable to S corporation? Which of the following is applicable to S corporation? AMT not applicable, PHC tax not applicable, AE tax not applicable. So none of above. D is the correct option. None of above will be applicable to S corporation. Who of the following may be eligible to be S corporation? Foreign corporation? No. Financial institution? No. Domestic partnership? No. It means none of above are eligible to be S corporation. Only a corporation can be S corporation, which is a domestic. Who of the following may be a shareholder of a S corporation? Estate? Yes, estate can be a shareholder. Non-resident individual? No. C corporation? No. Partnership? No. Answer is estate. Yes, A is the correct option. How many shareholders are allowed to be elected as a S corporation? There can be how many shareholders? Less than or equal to 100. C is the correct option. Which of the following is not allowed to be eligible for S corporation? Not allowed to be eligible as S corporation. Okay, issue equity stock only, obviously not allowed. Issue preference stock only, not allowed. That will be allowed, sorry. Issue only equity, that will be allowed. Issue preference, that will, you can issue only one kind of stock. So only equity can be issued, only preference can be issued. Issue of equity as well as preference stock, that will not be allowed. That will be two kind of stock. So C is a correct option. To be eligible as a S corporation, the consent of how many shareholders is needed? If you want to elect as a S corporation, consent of how many shareholders will be needed? Friends, unanimous consent is needed. As we have seen, 100% consent is needed. So answer is A. A corporation elected to be S status on a 5th February 2019, from when the corporation will be treated as a S corporation provided all the other conditions are fulfilled. Remember, 15th of the third month, that is 15th March, up to 15th March your consent should be received, and the consent has been received on 5th February. So it means for 2019 you will be considered as a S corporation. So it will start from 1st January 2019. If your consent is received by 15th March, then from the 1st January itself your status will be S status. So 1st January 19. What if in the above question the election was made on 5th April 2019? If it is on 5th April, that means it is after 15th March. And if it is after 15th March, then your S status will begin in the next year. So for the next year, it means 1st January 2020, your S status will begin. S corporation has a 60,000 equity stock and 40,000 preferred stock outstanding. They decided to terminate S status. Which of the following consent will be valid? Friends, for termination, how much consent is needed? Majority. Majority consent is needed. Majority means more than 50%, and it is voting, non-voting both. So here it is 60 plus 40. Total 1 lakh stock is there, and 50% of it will come to 50,000. So it should be more than 50,000 is needed. Now whether it is equity or preference doesn't make any difference. It should be more than 50,000. You just see the first 20,000 equity and 20,000 preference. It is coming to 40,000. So it will not be eligible. 30 equity and 10 preference. So it is again 40,000, not eligible. 100% equity but no preference. Okay, 100% equity means 60,000 equity. So it is 60,000. Yes, it is more than 50,000. So it is correct. It is eligible. 100% preference but no equity, that is 40,000 only. So it is again 40,000. Okay. So which will be valid option? That is a C option is a valid option. In that, termination may be done, because you need a more than 50% consent. Whether it is equity or preference doesn't make any difference, but it should be more than 50%. Next, on 5th April 2019, S corporation reached to 120 shareholders. So its S condition was breached. From which date the S status will be treated as a terminated? See, when it is a compulsory termination, the termination applies from the date of violation. And violation has been made on 5th April 2019. So your S status will be lost on 5th April itself. So first answer is correct, 5th April 2019. What will be the status of a corporation for IT return filing in the year of compulsory termination? When there is a compulsory termination, your year will be divided in two parts. First is a S status and second is a C status. So C is a correct option. C status up to termination and S status up to termination and C status for the balance. C is a correct answer. If S status is terminated, for how many years it cannot be revived? Once your S status will be lost, you will not get back your S status up to 5 years. That's why C option is the correct answer. So these being MCQs for chapter number 18 for S corporation basic eligibility criteria.
If you like this video, share it with your friends. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch more such videos and learn from our expert faculty members. Press the bell icon to get regular notifications whenever we upload a new video. Download NDI mobile app to get complete CA course online. We value your support. Thank you for watching.